Welcome to Sales for Nerds. I'm your host and chief nerd, Ruben Swartz. If you started a business because you love serving clients but realized you didn't like the sales and marketing aspect of running that business so much, this is the podcast for you. Sales and marketing doesn't have to suck. It can actually be a lot of fun. And on this show, we're going to teach you how to connect instead of network, teach instead of market, help instead of sell, so you can keep serving people even while you're building your pipeline and growing your business. Now let's get to it. All right, I'm excited to have with me all the way from Australia, Tim Hyde, the CEO and chief fixer of Win More Clients, and also the host of the More Clients, Less Effort podcast, where I was lucky enough to be a guest recently. Tim, welcome to Sales for Nerds. What do you have in your glass or your cup?
I have a cup of green tea for 7 o'clock in the morning in Australia. I thought possibly a whiskey, but might be a little bit early.
Even for an Australian, 7 a.m. is a little bit early for whiskey. And I've got some Bovine California Cabernet here in my glass. Tim, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
Fantastic to be here, Ruben. Thanks for the invitation.
And Tim helps folks, if I can summarize this correctly, helps folks streamline and scale and automate and organize operations so that they can kind of get out of their own way and let their business be a lot more efficient instead of always doing everything, sort of reinventing the wheel. Is that fair?
That is absolutely correct. One of the things I've sort of learned over my career, Ruben, is that we don't put enough focus on sales and marketing in a business, and that's the oxygen. And the more oxygen you can give to your business by getting your sales and marketing really, really dialed in and systemized and automated where possible, the more opportunities we have for growth, and the more opportunities we have to have the business serve us rather than us serving it.
And the more the business can serve the clients that we are, in theory, in business to serve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, how did you get started down this path?
I'm not really sure. I'm going to blame Uncle Scrooge originally. I was fascinated by my Uncle Scrooge golden book that I had as a 6-year-old and was always interested in this idea of entrepreneurship. Didn't do great at school, particularly. I think it was one of those things that, natural entrepreneurs don't particularly do well in an academic, structured environment. We like a little bit of free form. And ironically, I failed my year 11 business assignment because the concept I came up with was actually my teacher didn't think was a realistic idea. And at the time, it was to replace polystyrene extruded, produce trays with recycled cardboard covered in wax, which of course you see everywhere now. So obviously a little bit ahead of my time, but I got into IT in the early 90s, sort of around the advent of the internet, and was doing a lot of work in coding and project management sort of stuff. And I saw this sort of pattern, that you'd start at line 1 and you'd end at line, 78,000 or whatever number, how many lines of code you had. And, it was a system, right? You do this, then do this, then do this, then do this, then do this, right? And if you got to a point in your code where it got an instruction that it didn't know what to do, the code would hang or the code would break, right? Mm-hmm. Now, those of us old enough would remember the Microsoft blue screen of death, right? It says, don't know what to do. Here is a blue screen full of gibberish and you need to go and restart. Okay. Late 90s, a mate of mine came to me and said, let's build a social media site. Okay. Of course, late 90s, it wasn't called social media, but we're seeing the emergence of open source software. We were seeing the emergence of social media as we know it, with things like MySpace and a few other sort of forum platforms. And we created what was effectively a social media site for my hometown here in Canberra, and built that up. And, we had built an audience, I think of, maybe 25,000 people every single month, out of 400. I thought, okay, well, how do we monetize this? Right? And this is probably 2001. We thought, okay, we've got an audience, it's a reasonable size audience. Maybe we can sell advertising. And, I think the first time we sold it, we got a 6-pack of beer in exchange for promoting a local band and a bar. And that quickly became some free gig tickets and a case of, then a case of beer and then 2 cases of beer. And I thought, hey, maybe we've got something here. Maybe we can transform and turn this into, money to basically pay for all the effort that we're putting into this thing. And we did. But what I learned through that process, because clients would come back and say, hey, that didn't work. Those ads didn't work. And probably for the first time in history, we could actually get really, really specific around understanding what triggers, right, were resulting in what results. Because we could see that someone clicked on that 300 by 300 ad, with that particular messaging, but they didn't click on the 728 by 90 ad or whatever. And I started noticing that, people's marketing and sales life cycle was very much like this journey of code. It would get to a certain point and then break. Okay. Your customer, or your prospect in this case, would get to a certain point in their journey with you and they wouldn't know what to do next, or the next step would be too hard, or they'd get the blue screen of death from you and you wouldn't follow up on a proposal, and they would sort of disappear off into the wilderness or potentially just buy from someone else. Right? And this became sort of this fascinating obsession to me to, can we architect a customer journey that becomes seamless for your customer and gets them to do what you want them to do, and ultimately what they want to do as well.
And did you figure it out, or did you have to start another business to actually make that happen?
Well, ironically, I started another business. I got out of the Riot Act at the end of 2013. I just saw a diversification of advertising channels and didn't think that the offering we had without significant investment was able to change. It's still running today, right? So it's 25 years old this year. But left that at the end of 2013. In 2014, I just had a bunch of clients come back to me and say, hey, do you remember that stuff you were talking to us about? Can you help us with that? And was very fortunate to pick up some contracts through the Australian government and through a couple of marketing agencies we work with to actually, spend some time working with their clients and small businesses to educate them on what digital marketing was and how to make the most of it. So.
Well, I think a lot of people listening would say, gosh, it would be great if my government and a bunch of other people suddenly called me up and asked for my help. I'm guessing there's a little more to it that led those people to ask for your help. What do you think you did right?
I think I know sort of through the early noughties, I guess as digital marketing as we know it was starting to become a thing. I got invited into things like Management Institute of Australia and those sorts of things to actually speak with agencies to say, hey, this is what digital marketing is, and this is how you can take advantage of it for your clients. Right, this is a new medium that we're seeing people shift to, and I was working a sort of side hustle, probably my main hustle at the time. And my business was my side hustle in government. And even there, I was noticing that, the yellow pages, which used to be the resource to look up businesses, it was coming off the shelf and it was going under your, remember the big CRT screens? You remember those, Ruben?
I do.
It was coming
but let's
off the
explain
shelf
for people who may not know what we're talking about. CRT screens are not flat. They're those giant three-dimensional screens that weighed 50 pounds. Were only about 14 inches wide. And the yellow pages were a book, an actual printed book from the telephone company that businesses could buy ads in that would come out once a year. And that was, they used to get dropped off at every home and every business.
Yeah, they did. And those things were coming off the shelf as the reference point, and they were getting slid under that big monitor to raise it up to the right ergonomic height. Right. And I distinctly recall a catch up with a mate of mine who was very proud to show me the $50,000 ad he'd purchased on the back page of the yellow pages, the back cover. And he was appearing on the back cover of the yellow pages. And I went from there to my wife's office. And the first 4 computers I walked past all had the yellow pages stuck under this giant monitor to raise it up. I'm going, that's your $50,000 you've just spent there, and no one's ever going to see it, because you can't exactly pull this thing out very easily to flip through and find a supplier. And of course, everyone was then shifting. It was things like Alta Vista and Yahoo and whatnot, which are those early browsers, and introduction of Google, in the sort of early to mid noughties. Google was 2002, I think. That people started turning to this other platform to get information, right? And I think any time that your clients are shifting where they're getting their information, you can either move with them or you can disappear. And as much as I hear people saying, "Oh, I hate Facebook, I don't like using it," if your customer's there, your business needs to be there. If your customers move to TikTok, you need to be on TikTok. If your clients are on LinkedIn, you need to be on LinkedIn as well. Even if you don't like it, you need to be where your clients are.
So how should people go about figuring out where their best clients are? Because it's one thing to say, you can sort of say, well, I'm fine. I can find quote unquote clients almost anywhere. But a lot of times people, I think, find, and they might overcount sort of the lowest common denominator clients, but not count or undercount really the ideal clients.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, if you think about it, right? If you have 1,000 people going into your CRM from TikTok, right? But the 5 people you meet on LinkedIn are the ones that give you customers, where should you be? Okay. And I think there is that analysis that you need to go through and really understanding the demographics and psychographics of your ideal customer. And I don't mean every customer, right? Some of them that you're probably working with right now, you probably don't really want, if you had the choice. But really look at your ideal customers. And if you're in business already, you can do that, right? Just list them out, and look for commonalities. And so, these are my best customers because they buy the most stuff from me, or I enjoy working with them, and we create the biggest transformation. Maybe they pay me on time and talk about me to other people as well. Look at where they're from. If they're all sort of Fortune 1000 companies, and CEOs, well, where do those CEOs of Fortune 100 companies or 1000 companies go to? Are they on the golf course? Do they go to certain conferences? Do they read certain magazines? Are they on certain social media? And if so, which social media, and how often are they on there? If you start looking at the commonalities of your best clients, right, that's where you should start focusing your marketing on.
And I do think it's important to look at those clients that you have that are not the best clients, because you want to understand what's the difference between those and the best clients, because you'd much rather pick up more of the best clients rather than the folks who are draining your energy, not paying your bills on time, the ones whose calls you're not excited to return, et cetera. And I think that's also a great point. You mentioned, like, they may be quote unquote on LinkedIn, but those CEOs may not be active on LinkedIn. So you may not be able to actually reach them there. You may have to reach them on the golf course or via some other mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, look at what they're doing. I mean, pay attention. And I think this is where having a CRM in your business is such a critical tool. I don't think enough businesses have CRMs, and certainly not CRMs that are effectively used, right? But start taking notes about your customers and what you observe either through the conversation. Okay, so I can see it's a bit blurry there, Ruben, but behind you, you've got an absolute stack of yellow spined books, right? So in a casual conversation, I could ask, what are all those yellow spined books, right? If you see, your client's social media where they're regularly doing charity golf days, okay, observe that. If you're in their office and you see the magazine on their desk, take note of the magazine that they're reading, right? So, ask, how was your weekend? What did you get up to? Oh, went out sailing, right? If just pay attention to those things and record them against your client, against your prospect in your CRM, so that you can pull those people out and look for that commonality in the information.
And then once you have that profile and you presumably can extract some meaningful channel or channels to communicate with this ideal client, what do you do next?
Well, that's where you need to start putting yourself. Again, even if you don't necessarily like the channel, if you don't like golf, but all of your best customers are on the golf course, learn. Right? I think that's
Learn
what
to
we need
serve
to do.
drinks or
Learn to serve drinks. Okay. Be a
drive the
caddy,
cart.
drive golf
Right.
carts. Just be
Metaphorically,
around the
perhaps.
space. Hang out in the bar at the 19th hole. Right. To catch up with people. Putting people in that space, be in their space. I think there's if we look at in the ideal customer journey as much as possible, the first step is awareness. If your prospect is not aware of who you are, they cannot buy from you no matter how good you are at what you do.
And I think that's the problem for 99% of small businesses and 99% of situations, right? Their customers have no idea they exist, or their potential customers have no idea who they are.
Yeah. And you don't need many. If you think about it as a consultant, if you had like 10 new clients in the next couple of months, in the next 90 days, it would probably be transformative. If you had 100 new clients in the next year, right? That's an astonishing transformation for most small businesses if you had 100 new clients. Now, obviously, if you're a supermarket and you have 100 new clients, that's probably not enough, right? But for most consultants who'll be listening to this podcast, if you have somewhere between 10 and 100 new clients, even 10 and 20 new clients in the next 12 months, that would be an astonishing transformation to your business. So you don't actually need that many in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
So we can actually take the time to be a little bit more specific about who it is that we want to try and reach and how we want to reach them. Right. And the first step starts with awareness, understanding who it is. Obviously, probably the first step. Step 2 is making them aware of who we are. So if you know who your clients are, send them a postcard. Invite them to a thing that they're interested in. Put your
Do
ads
something
in
that will
front
be
of them. Put your
valuable
ads in
to
front of them.
them.
Yeah, and do something that's valuable to them to start with. All right. If they become aware of who you are, then you can start to educate them and show them potentially what it is that you can do.
Now, there are probably some people listening who say, if I had 10 new clients this year, my head would explode. I couldn't handle it. I don't want to grow. I don't want to hire enough people. 100 new clients, forget about it. I would just instantly turn into vapor. Fine. Leaving aside whether that's true or not, imagine you have 100 people or 10 people, or whatever it is, who want to work with you, and then you get to pick which ones you're going to work with.
Yeah. Have them apply to work with you, not the other way around.
Right.
It's an incredibly scary but empowering feeling to say to someone, no, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, but I don't know that this is necessarily going to work. Right? It just frees you up to kind of work with ones that are really, really good for you.
But I think that's a really powerful point. Even if, let's just say, like you said, somewhere between 10 and 100-ish people you kind of want in your waiting room. You may or may not actually end up working with them all, but we're not talking about millions of people. We're not talking about a football stadium worth of people. It's a relatively small number of ideal prospects who need to know you exist.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? As much as everyone, and I see it all the time, because it's a service that we offer as well. But I get a ton of people sort of outreaching saying, we'll fill your calendar with 10 sales appointments a day. I'm like, well, that's fantastic, but are those people there actually want to buy from me, or are they just kind of random names in my calendar? And I think that's the thing we need to kind of really look at and say, if we don't need lots of people, we just need a few of the right ones consistently. And that's where I think your CRM, where your automation, where your marketing systems become critically important, because what we're looking for is not necessarily massive numbers. What we want as business owners is the consistency of new opportunity, which we can choose to take advantage of or not. And if we look at that customer journey thing, right, that's just a system. It's just like a piece of code in our business that we roll out. And it's on us as the business owner to make that as efficient as possible at creating new opportunities for us, right? So if you've got a CRM make sure that you take notes about your sales calls and you record them in your CRM. Right?
There are some customers I have who I hope are listening right now. Like, hey, it's not just Ruben telling you this; it's Tim Hyde.
Yeah, that's
Pay
right.
attention.
Right? Use it. But think about this: so a CRM is an investment in your business. It's not a cost; it's an investment, right? And it's not a very big expense. Okay, usually somewhere between say $50 and a couple of $100 a month. But you've got to keep using it in order to get value. If you don't use it, you won't get value from it. It just becomes a piece of software that turns up, the subscription of which turns up on your bank statement every month and says,
Right.
here's another $50, here's another $50, here's another $50. But let's put this in a different context. Okay. We know that a CRM helps you grow your business. Firstly, it gets you organized, right? Secondly, if you've implemented some automation, it will save you time. And thirdly, right, it will kind of keep track of where everything's up to. And so usually off the back of that, you're going to grow sales. By recording information about your customers, you can have a deeper relationship with them, right? Imagine your significant other, for example, if you forgot her birthday because you didn't know when it was, that is a relationship that would not last very long.
Right. Or if you go to a doctor and they don't have any records of the last time you were in there and they have to start all over again, you would lose a lot of confidence in that doctor.
Absolutely true. Okay. So CRM we know is a valuable tool. Now there's another valuable tool that most of us own, and that's an automobile, right? Automobiles cost us a little bit more than a CRM, right? We'll spend 20, 30, 40, 50, $100,000, on a car. And a car requires some ongoing maintenance. It requires new tires from time to time. We need to put, gas in it. We need to get rego and insurance, every year. So it has an ongoing expense. Mm-hmm. But if you didn't drive your car for a week, would you be going, bloody car, it's so expensive, right? Maybe if you didn't drive it for a month, you might start to go, well, do I really need a car?
Right.
Absolutely. But if you do drive it, it will take you from where you are to where you want to go much faster than walking.
Yep.
Okay. It is a system comprised of about 30,000 parts that comes together and gives you some controls and just a few controls to go left, right, faster, slower, and helps you and potentially your family go from where you are to where you want to go quicker than walking. And if we look at systems in our business under the same lens, a CRM helps us get organized and helps our business move from where we are to where we want to go much faster than walking.
And the car also helps us carry things that we can't necessarily, either we can't carry very easily or we can't carry at all, but we can load it up in the back of the car. And I think of the CRM in a similar way. I either would struggle to keep all that information in my head, or at some point I just can't carry it all anymore. But for the CRM, no problem. You just throw it in the back and it's there when you pop the trunk and you take it out and use it as needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we've got to look at our business like that. First and foremost, I think as business owners, we don't put enough focus on our sales and marketing. And then secondly, it's the tools that we use to systemize and, get the same result every single time. And the more we work on the system, the more consistent our results are going to be. And that's certainly in my experience, Ruben, and I know it will be in yours as well, the thing that terrifies business owners more than anything else and keeps us up at night is not knowing what is going to come next. Right? So again, I think if we don't know what comes next, let's fix that and put a system in so that we know, like every single week, I'm going to have 2 or 3 sales appointments. And I can go ahead with them or not, but I'm going to have a couple of sales appointments every couple of weeks or every week to go, I know that I've got this consistency.
And I think beyond that, even in some ways, even easier for people who might be a little nervous about sales. Am I talking to my past clients? I'm not even talking about it as a sales appointment, but just seeing what's going on in their world. Am I talking to the people who send me referrals? Am I sending them referrals? These things are not necessarily direct sales icky, like, oh my goodness, I've got to go close the deal thing. They're just maintaining and nurturing relationships. And I always tell people who get a little bit wound up around, oh gosh, I don't like putting my notes in the CRM, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're not doing it for the CRM. You're doing it for the relationship with the other person. so that you can have a better relationship with them. The CRM is just the repository, so you don't have to try to keep track of all that in your own head, which you came to me because you said you're no longer able to do.
Yeah. I did this experiment at a conference a couple of years back. I was speaking on stage, and I think we had maybe 200 participants in the audience. And I was using this to illustrate how good our memory is. Okay. We get business from intimacy, right? We have relationships from intimacy. And there's a rule from an anthropologist called Robin Dunbar who talked about Dunbar's number, and that we can maintain natively about 5 relationships, 5 intimate relationships. Some people are much better than others. There might be 6 or 7. Other people are worse at it. There might be 1 or 2 intimate relationships. And typically that's why we only have 1 significant other, right? You discard all the other ones. You have 1 because that's easy to focus on. But if you were to just imagine this in your head right now, raise a little mental flag there. If you can name, 5 people's birthdays and phone numbers. Okay, do you reckon you could do that, Ruben? Phone numbers and birthdays for 5 close people.
Yeah.
All right. Could you name the color that they typically wear? Their favorite color?
No.
Okay. Favorite football team as well? Probably not, right? Maybe.
That one might actually be easier.
That might be easier. Okay. If you went out to 15, could you name 15 people like that?
No. I mean, it's possible, but not really. Like 5, I know I can do. 15, like maybe, but probably not.
Okay. Or your friends' kids' names, right? Or their spouse. 5 people you can probably do it with. And those 5 people are probably the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? You have an intimate relationship with those 5 people. But even then, you can't remember huge amounts of things about them.
Right.
Okay. When you get out to 15, it's like, I'm really starting to struggle to remember these details. Certainly if you get to 50, no chance. Okay. When the chances of you trying to remember 3 or 4 pertinent details about 50 people is actually really, really slim. And that's what your CRM is for. It's for recording those details and feeding that information back to you. But if we want to have a relationship that is intimate enough with our prospects that they feel like they are important to us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We don't buy from people where we don't feel like we're important to them. We don't have relationships with those people if they don't feel like we're important to them. All the way around, that they're important to us. You know what I mean? And that's what your CRM is for, is to record those details so that we can record them. Almost like that little advisor that follows you around at a diplomatic function and says, that's the ambassador to so-and-so country. And
right.
His mistress's name is this, and they've got oil concessions in Sudan and right. It's that little advisor that says, here are some really important details about this person that will make them feel like you remember who they are and that they are important to you. Last time you caught up 6 months ago, this is what you spoke about.
Right. And we can pick up where we left off.
And we can pick up where they left off. And that makes them feel good. And if we can make people feel good, then they're more likely to want to do business with us.
And I think all of that's true. But I'm also going to say, for people who say, gosh, that just seems manipulative, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying it is, but some people are going to have that reaction. It's also like, I just want to have a better relationship with this person. Like, there are a few people's birthdays I remember in my head, but I'm the person in the family who remembers the quote unquote remembers the birthdays because I put them in the calendar. So every year I get the alert the week before. Right? It's not cheating to put, it's because it's important to me to remember the birthday that I put it in there in the first place, right? Same thing with these details. I want to know who the guy's mistress is. Like, that seems like an important thing to know about the guy, if that's a salient detail of our conversation. It's like the doctor. The doctor makes you feel like the most important person on the planet for the half an hour that you're talking to that particular doctor, but they have hundreds, thousands of people that they do that with every day because they have records.
Yeah. And this is what it's about, right? We want to create intimacy at scale. That's what business is about. We want to have relationships. And if I want to have a relationship like with my customer, I've got to remember important stuff about them.
And there's a limit to that, right? We can't have intimacy at scale with millions of people, right? That's why I don't know what it's like in Australia, but there's all these jokes in America about how terrible it is to be doing business with the cable company or your bank or something like that. It's sort of like the prototypical example of you're just a number to these people. They don't really care.
Yeah.
Versus you go to the mom and pop diner around the corner, they know your name, they remember your favorite order, they make you feel welcome and at home, you really enjoy it. Or the person who does a great job with your website, remembers all your stuff and what your favorite color is and this, that, and the other thing, versus the giant company that thinks they're doing intimacy at scale, but really is just using some AI chatbot that's driving you up the wall.
Mm.
And to go back to your earlier point, when we're talking about scale, we're not talking about millions of people. We're talking about dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands, but not a ginormous number of people. It's not something that's so outlandish that we can't have reasonable relationships if we're willing to let the computer do some of the memorization for us.
It's just a tool, okay? It's
Right.
just a tool to help us. If you were to build a house and not have hammers and nails, right? Building a house would be much harder, right? If you've
So,
got a hammer and a nail, a chisel and something that's saw, it just
yeah,
makes it a little bit easier to get the outcome that you want.
saws, levers. I'm a big believer in levers as a tool. Let's make things easier.
Yeah, but you got to use it, and it's just one of those habits, right? So have it open, right? If you've got a CRM, have it open. Don't
Yeah.
have it on hidden away on a tab on, amongst the other 300 tabs you've got open on your browser. One of the really effective strategies that I've seen, just go and buy a cheap second monitor, right? Plug it in, and then take that tab and literally have it sitting there open so that, it's there. You can see exactly where these relationships are up to. As you prepare for a call with someone, open up your CRM, get their details out and said, hey, Ruben, it's great to see you again. Right? Ruben likes red wine. I'm sure Ruben would love for you all to send him red wine.
That's
Right?
right.
But those
Why
kinds of
not keep
things,
track of those
those kinds of
details?
things are really important, right? Should I be out in the US, right? Out your way, Ruben. We'll go out for dinner and I'll now know to order red wine, not white
There
wine.
you go. Well, Tim, this has been fantastic. If people want to learn more, where can they find you?
Reach out, winmoreclients.com.au. Happen to or follow me on social media. Happy to have a chat and see if there's some areas we can help.
And of course, we will have all those links in the show notes. Tim, thanks so much for getting up early and joining us. Really appreciate all that you have to offer. You've been doing the CRM stuff a lot longer than I have, but I feel like I'm talking to a kindred spirit here. And I'm just going to take some of these clips and I'm going to have them automated so I could just play them for people when they start complaining about putting notes in and using the CRM and all that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for the invite to be on.
Thanks, Tim. Cheers. Thanks for listening. Drop an iTunes review or a review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you've got a friend who would benefit from this episode,